We all know our money's worth less and less every day, but I think we're not seeing the whole picture. We talk a lot about inflation, but inflation is really just a symptom. This notion of the long run debasement of the dollar packs a lot of punch. At the core, what's going on is inflation is a result of what's taking place. The debasement of the dollar is been going on. It's been going on for a long, long time, but it's had some especially profound periods in the last 20 years. Certainly in the period after 2008, the great so-called debt crisis, when trillions upon trillions of dollars were created out of thin air and handed over to banks and other organizations to keep them afloat. Fast forward to 2020, we were finally moving away from that. They called it quantitative easing in the United States and elsewhere. And we'd finally really kind of slowed down on that. We weren't handing out so much money. When COVID came along, and we really went to town then. Governments started handing out trillions and trillions of dollars, far beyond what they'd even done post 2008. What does that mean? Well, if you think of your dollar as something that represents a value of service or labor or goods, and it's not exactly this way, but think of it this way, that all the money represents the value of all that, what we could do with that money, buy something, purchase a service, or what have you. If that money that exists represents that, then what happens when we all of a sudden just print money? Because money is just a piece of paper. If we were to just print more money and somehow bring it into circulation, now the amount of money is far greater than the total of the goods and services. And that's what's been going on. And this is what is called debasement of the dollar. It means the value of the dollar is worth less and less because we're flooding the market with dollars. And this is what government has been doing and continues to do and continues to be committed to do in many jurisdictions. So inflation is a result of that. So what happens is when you have far more dollars chasing a limited number of goods, services, a supply, then the cost, the price you must pay in those dollars for those goods and services increases. That's inflation. That's what we experience. That's what we notice when we go to the grocery store. That's what we certainly, I think, are all noticing. Far exceeds what they tell us. It's far greater than the 2%, 2.5, 3%, whatever their target inflation is. All you have to do is go to the grocery store and buy a car and buy some other goods and services that are now far more expensive than they used to be, much more than the 2 or 3% a year that they're talking about. So this debasement of the dollar has got to stop. If we don't stop it, then we just basically are demolishing our middle class by doing this. And so, of course, one of the pointiest ends of that stick right now is in housing. We think that the price of houses has gone up, and the price in terms of what we must pay in dollars has gone up for that, but it's because the value of the dollars have been drastically diminished or debased by the economic practices that we've been following. So at a macroeconomic level, change has to happen. But that's pretty hard for you or me or anyone else as an individual to execute. But what we can do is protect ourselves against that. And so one of the things that's going to come because of the debasement of the dollar is tax increases. We're starting to see those in a number of jurisdictions. Most recently we've seen it. And it's a small thing and it only affects a certain number of people. But it's what I would call a trial balloon. And that is the increase in the capital gains tax inclusion rate. And so for most people, it doesn't affect them directly because it means there's going to be additional tax paid on increases in the value of assets over $250,000. So for most people, the only asset they have like that is their home and is their primary residence. And so it's excluded from that issue to begin with. But this is the government getting creative in how they are going to gather that money. And they're having to get creative because they don't have enough money, because the value of their dollar is just as debased as yours and mine. So these tax increases are going to keep coming. And what we need, or what we can do at an individual level, is take steps to protect ourselves from these types of future tax increases. It's not simple, but it can be done. It requires strategic planning in your finances in order to do that. There's many ways to do it, but one of the things we really need to do is not be holding dollars or dollar-denominated assets, if you want to call them that. So certainly GICs are a bad idea now, even though we're getting a better interest rate. And it doesn't mean they're universally terrible and should never be used. It just means that those dollars are going to continue to be debased. Holding debt instruments like bonds denominated in dollars, also a problem. So you want to be holding on to things that are going to increase in value. Those are true assets. And right now, of course, houses are one of those things, if you've got one of those. Stocks has done that as well. And so it looks like the stock market is going up and up and up. But again, it's only because the value of those businesses is relatively static. Maybe it's increasing marginally, but the value of the dollar is diminishing rapidly. And so it translates into an average, over the past nearly 30 years, we've had an average of about 12% rate of return in the US stock market. So when we make these plans, we make them in order to be sure that we're going to be able to cope and manage through what's going to come, which is surely going to be further debasement of the dollar, greater tax increases, and continuing and increasing inflation.